I knew stuff, and I knew I could help people, but people didn't realize I knew. I was like, why don't people come to me? Oh yeah, I need to actually make it obvious that what I do can help people and makes it appealing. Oh, I need to learn how to communicate, how to make content, how to record myself in front of a camera, which is very different than talking to someone.
Well, thank you so much for welcoming me today, Saint-Laurent-du-Var.
Yep, thank you.
Beautiful apartment you have.
Yeah, thank you.
So could you tell me what is it that you do?
So as of today, it's actually always a hard question for me to answer because it's a bit different from what you tend to see, especially in France. But you could call that, I use the term vitality engineer as my position just to stand out. But I really help people, generally speaking, with chronic health issues outside of the medical system, meaning I will help people with how they live their life on a day-to-day basis, because these things impact their well-being. So the main problems I solve for people are chronic back pain, knee pain, digestive issues, hormonal issues, especially for women with menstrual issues. And so that's what I do in the clinic. And then I also do conferences for education and workshops as of more recently. So
It's quite a lot of things to cover.
Yeah.
How did you get into that? Let's start with that.
So originally I was a computer engineer, so very different. That was my formal education a few years ago. And the way I started to transition into, let's call it health, the health space, was first of all to help myself. I had health issues pretty young, I had all of it, all of the above. Had back pain, joint pain, chronic fatigue, like very traumatic. I would sleep 10 hours a night and be more tired than my friends who would party every week, which felt unfair. So I had all these things, and I was like, I'm 20 and I can't see myself living my life like that. It's not, I can't. So just because I tend to learn by myself, like look online for resources, I just started to research. So I got into podcasts and YouTube videos and books and all of that stuff. And also because it was for me, I implemented right away. So it did not stay at the stage of theory. It had to be applied and yield results, because otherwise I would just discard it, which I've discarded many things. And I realized that I started to really grow fond of that field of health and wellness. And I was doing just that in my spare time, pretty much. So health, wellness, personal development, all of the things to just feel better and have a better life. And basically 1 year into my first job as an engineer, I was living in Finland. One day, after spending 2 weeks on the French Riviera for the summer vacation, which was amazing, came back to the office, sat down on a Monday morning in front of my computer, and hit me, depression. Like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that anymore. And so it really became obvious that there was this lack of meaning in that's what I felt in what I did. And that I was now supposed to transition into this field of health and wellness and help people just like I've helped myself. And I've always had this passion for sharing information, for teaching. So it just made sense to be in this position. Yeah.
But you kind of started with the curiosity to find out what was wrong with you. Right?
Yeah.
What was wrong with you? Did you find out?
Yeah. So I would just preface this answer by saying that we tend to think, generally speaking, like in our society, that there is A causes B, like it's very linear. Like there is one cause for this problem. And in reality, and that's very much the case with many of my patients who tend to tell me, I've tried everything. And so it was not one cause, it was multiple causes. So among the things I've addressed is obviously my diet. It has gone through many iterations. I've addressed how I breathe, which might seem so basic that you don't think about it, but it's massive. I was breathing through my mouth 24/7 almost, and that's not good. So breathing, diet, hydration, how I exercise, how I handle and manage my mind. So like mental, emotional health, like a lot of journaling, things like that. I changed a topic I'm really fascinated by, and it's my light hygiene, in a way, light environment, which plays a massive role as well. Changed relationships that didn't serve me, like let go of old relationships. And yeah, these are some of the examples of things I've worked on.
Yeah. So how do you feel now then?
Much better. Well, now it's like I don't need to sleep as much. I don't need to take 3 naps in a day. I don't need to worry too much about what I eat. I feel good. I don't have a heavy gut. I don't have bloating. I have good skin health. I can exercise and make progress in the gym. And I just feel happier overall. I just need to, I don't feel like I'm struggling against my own body all the time.
Yeah. Well, you are clearly in a better shape than I am, but I do relate to that. When I don't eat that well, then you feel slower and you feel bloated, like you said. So I can relate to that part of it.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that you hit that point where you felt that you were in a depression. Did I understood that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. What did that feel like for you? Can you describe that feeling?
Right. So it's always delicate to describe feelings like that, but I would say there was this pointlessness in life of like almost dreading to wake up every morning, to be like, I don't want to wake up for that. So there was dread, pointlessness, hopelessness a bit about the future. And just a word I like a lot, a lack of buoyancy, like just feeling vibrant, like just I wake up and I feel vibrant, I'm happy to be alive. And I didn't have that. So it felt a bit somber and dark. But I pretty quickly identified what was the reason behind the depression. It was like, hey, you're supposed to be in a different place. And it just like the pain, and it's very often the case with also my work with patients, the pain is a message that something needs to change, right? If you look at a child putting their hand on the hot stove, it burns. The point of the pain is don't put your hand on the hot stove. It's a message. It makes sense. Everybody knows that. So, but as adults, we tend to forget that. And it's not always true, but many times it's a good idea to ask the question, what is this telling me? For the depression, because I identified the reason pretty quickly, I did not stay in that state too long.
Yeah. That's quite good that you were able to pull yourself out of that situation.
Yeah.
But we recently had that discussion. I'm looking at Anton right now, but we recently had that discussion, I think, together with someone. But if you think about, because I believe that, well, it's not even what I believe, but I think it's very difficult because you don't know what other people feel. So what you feel feels like the standard and normal. So I guess it's very hard to determine what is normal and what is standard thinking. And that brings me sort of to happiness, because I sort of believe that you can't be in a constant state of happiness, can you? So you have more moments, I think, that you kind of live up to and that you really appreciate that certain moment. How do you see that? Yeah, or maybe I am depressed. That could be the case.
Yeah. No.
How do you see that?
So yeah, it's definitely a big topic. I think we can get lost in the definition of words as well. I think there is a version of happiness that's an emotion, and as an emotion, it is fleeting by definition, right? It comes and goes, just like many things, just like actually motivation, like getting things done. You can't rely solely on motivation to get things done, because it will wane. So happiness in that sense, this version of happiness is the same thing for me. It's like there will be times when I feel happier and more excited than others. That's normal. But after having really looked into personal development and studied the mind a lot, there is also such a thing as what I might call joy, which is like this background state of whatever happens, I'm okay. And I can just enjoy the journey regardless of what happens. So we could go into a big discussion about that, but basically we associate happiness with my preferences are satisfied, right? And when they are not satisfied, I'm not happy or not content. But that's basically, we project our preferences on life, and basically like we are only happy when they are met. And that's basically a pretty powerless state to be in, because I can't control life. And so my happiness is up to life, which from my perspective, is not a great place to be. I like to see it as like, if my preferences are met, great, I will enjoy the ride and enjoy the happiness. If my preferences are not met, I will tell myself, okay, it's an opportunity, and I will enjoy that ride as well. And in that sense, outside of the fleeting sense of happiness that may or may not happen, I feel joyful that I am here participating on Earth, whatever happens, and I will just promise to myself that I will enjoy it regardless. So there is this kind of constant low-level state of joy, regardless of what happens. Now, it's easier said than done. It's a lot of theory, but I have been able to practice that, and I'm getting better over the years.
Yeah. Can you give an example how you can practice that and apply that to yourself?
Yeah, so it could be, so I have a workshop coming up, okay, and I opened it for only 6 people, so small group. And of course, I would be thrilled if 6 people instantly sign up. Like, yeah, like even if I had a queue, like a backlog of people, like, oh, I'm on a waiting list, I'm ready. That would make me really happy. And I've launched it 10 days ago, and I have 3 signups so far. And I was expecting something different, because I put a lot of work into the copywriting and all that stuff, you know. And so a past version of me would be disappointed, or would have been disappointed for most of the 10 days so far. And that way I could say that I'm not happy because I don't have many signups. Now I'm like, I did my best for the copywriting. I have 3 signups so far. I have 10 days until the workshop. So it's like, what is the opportunity here? Well, the opportunity is to become resourceful and find other ways to communicate so that I can fill the last 3 spots. So I don't take that as something that's disappointing. I take that as like, okay, that's stimulating. That's like allowing me to be resourceful, really. That's a word I like a lot. And it's turning a challenge into an opportunity. And to just link it back to health, I have found that the healthier you are, the easier it is to do. Whereas the unhealthier you are, the more you feel like things are happening to you, and that therefore, based on the circumstances you find yourself in, you may or may not be happy.
Yeah.
Right.
And by unhealthy, you are not necessarily speaking about how much you weigh, for example, and how much you exercise. But
yeah, so that's a good question, because how do you define health, right? What's the metric you use? So weight is one metric, but some people can be heavy and very healthy, and vice versa, right? And exercise is one variable of health, right? And so there are many, many markers. When I assess a new patient, I use like an extensive set of questionnaires, and I assess the person physically, and so I can tell visually as well if they are healthy. You can see it if they look bloated, how their skin looks, how their eyes look. All of that stuff can give clues about the state of health of someone. But yeah, when I say health, I would say you could summarize it in like someone's, what we could call the nervous system state. Like, are they in fight or flight? That's what we call, like sympathetic is called fight or flight, which means that your whole life is basically, you feel like you're surviving and running away from threats, or like trying to fight for something. Or are you more into the rest and digest, also called the parasympathetic? Are you like relaxed and you can just go with the flow? And many people are very much in the fight or flight all day. And that's why there are many sleep issues as well. And so that's one good marker of how healthy someone is. It's like, are they constantly like on edge, like, or constantly like in a rush, constantly like, usually we can feel that, right? So that's one great way to do it. But yeah, there are many others, like levels of toxicity, organ health, posture, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
But because I'm also reflecting and thinking about how I feel myself usually. I mean, like you said, you have ups and downs, and sometimes you're more excited than other days, of course. But if I take a look at myself, I'd say that I put myself in both categories, I think, because I am relaxed in a way. That means that that probably also has to do with my financial situation, which I worked hard for, so that you are in a position that you're able to make choices and that you have time, that you're not constantly having to chase money, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I also always feel an urgency to act. So it feels like I need to keep moving forwards and pushing, and building and harder and scaling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd say there is a massive restlessness.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel, it is stress, but it doesn't really feel like bad stress, I think.
Yeah. 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 It's stimulating, not like depleting you, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're from the Netherlands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's pretty common in your culture where you're from, but also just like in the West in general, is like, because like we tend to have these beliefs that are taught to us that we need to work hard to just make it happen and then save money and eventually retire and all of that stuff. So, and this is where we could go very deep into the mind and how the mind works and how the subconscious works, especially, and why we have these urges out of nowhere that we can't seem to control. Like, why do I feel restlessness for no reason, right? When I'm on the beach right now, I'm just trying to enjoy my time. And so basically the society we live in, for the most part in the West, is like, it's teaching us to like work hard and get things done. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty bad at teaching us to relax. So this is where like things like Eastern philosophy can help to just balance things out. Now, of course, what we were discussing before recording is like balance, right? Because I have felt this restlessness as well. And of course, because finances are a reality in our society, like our survival depends on that, literally. And just our state of comfort and all of that stuff. And we have responsibilities. We can put a lot of effort there at the expense of other stuff. So it's like, the question is like, when is enough enough? And that's a question that I don't think there is a single answer to. But if we don't ask it, we will keep like playing out this pattern of like, I need to work more and make more and da-da-da. And it's not that it's a bad thing. It's like, it can lead you to a place that you don't enjoy and lead you to sacrifice things you don't want to sacrifice. And so I like to say, it's a bit silly to say out loud, but it works. It's like, if you want answers, just ask good questions. So like, why am I doing this? And when is enough enough? And as long as I ask myself the questions, I stay conscious of what's happening. And yeah, then there are resources like you can, I mean, that's not something I'm practicing. Like, can I learn to be at peace regardless of my situation, right? Doesn't mean I don't act. It means I can act without feeling this agitation, this restlessness. So can I be at peace and act, right?
Yeah. Yeah, personally for me, I think I get a lot of rest out of not focusing on the results. I've read, well, it's been some time ago, but there is a book, The 12-Week Year, and there are many books that are based on the same philosophy and theory, that is that what we are used to is focusing on the end result. So let's say an X amount of money goal or X amount of subscribers or sign-ups or whatever. But that is basically out of your control.
Yes.
Because it will lack based on what you did. So you can't really control it, but what you can control is the actions that you put into getting there where you want to be. So as long as you've done those actions, then you can kind of be at rest.
Yes.
And feel comfortable that you did what you had to do.
That's very powerful. Yeah, so it's the difference between an outcome goal and a process goal.
Yeah.
And indeed, most people, like the New Year resolutions are coming, and they are like, I want to lose weight. I want to weigh that much. I want da. And that's all outcome. That's all great.
Yeah.
I think, and that's things I've been teaching to my clients. It's depending on, of course, their issue, but many clients have needed that knowledge. It's like, I think it's powerful to leverage both, because the outcome goal is what gives you the desire to act, usually, right? Sure. It's what makes you dream, and what gives you it's like kind of the wind in your sails, what makes you go forward when it's hard. So it's helpful to have the outcome goal, but just to keep it in mind to like get in the right spirit.
Yeah.
And then like, what's the process to back that up? And in my opinion, you win the moment you fall in love with the process. When you actually get more out of the process than thinking about the outcome, that's when you really win. And
that's probably the power of routine.
Yeah,
I guess.
Of this. And again, there may be like many subconscious things that are happening that can prevent you from falling in love with going to the gym, for example, right? Many people it's a struggle. And there are techniques to work with that. But when you get to that point, it's like the journey becomes enjoyable, and then you're unstoppable, because eventually you will get to the outcome, right? Because it's inevitable. If you keep putting in the right input, you will get the right output. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very powerful distinction.
Yeah. And for the classes that you teach, because you teach.
Yes.
But is it all related to this topic, or is it something completely different?
So I teach many things. And I do kind of three kinds of events that I run. So there are conferences, which will be more theory. So for example, the next one in a couple of weeks from now will be on back pain, like not all of them, because I can't be exhaustive, but many of the factors that lead to back pain. Next month, I will have one on biophysics, which is just a fancy word to say, in what way does physics, not chemistry, but physics, play a role into health? So that's more like conferences, more like theory. Workshops, which I have my first one coming up in 10 days or so. It's on a topic with a lot of practical application, and this next one coming up will be on how to have a flat tummy, basically. But I will teach like the abdominals part. I'll teach the diet part and how to lose weight sustainably, and why many diets don't work, with all my understanding. And number three, a factor that's often not looked at is the state of health of the organs. And the reason why, if I give you an example, have you ever eaten too much?
Yes.
Yes. Do you feel bloated after
Yes.
that? Yeah. So did you just gain weight in 2 hours, or is it bloating? It's bloating,
yeah, it's
right?
Bloating, yeah.
Many people say like, oh, I gain weight. No, it's like bloating. So the inflammation of the organs plays a role into the appearance of a flat tummy. So you cannot just work out your abdominals and have a diet, follow a diet, without considering that, if you truly want a sustainable, healthy, flat tummy. So that's the workshop, just to give you an example. And the third one I've been doing for a while now, it's I teach Qigong classes. So Qigong is, most people know about Tai Chi from China. It's basically like very gentle exercises to relax, to combine the breath and the movement. And I do that usually on the beach, which is really nice. And just like, I do that and welcome anyone to come, just to like have a moment to relax, practice, have a good time. Yeah. So these are some of the things. And of course, with my online content, I teach whatever topic I feel like teaching on, or whatever has been requested as well. Yeah. So it could be like, recently I did something on managing blood sugar. It could be breathing, it could be many topics. Yeah.
Interesting. So it's all related to that which you do.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And how, talking about balance as well, how do you find what is a priority for you? Because if you need to go to a congress, if you need to teach a lesson, do an online class.
Yes, good question. And I've gone through many iterations. Again, I wouldn't say I'm yet at the perfect place. to know what to do, what's a priority, I always come down to the fundamental principles of like first principles. Okay, so it's like, okay, where am I right now? Cool. What are my goals? Okay, right now it's mostly growing my business on the French Riviera. It's like, okay, what does it take to grow a business? Because growing a business is a pretty unspecific goal, right? Yeah, growing a business. So, okay, well, growing a business, it means like I have more clients signing up, more like cash flow coming to the business. Great. That's a bit more specific, but then what does that mean? It means that I need to have more people seeing what I do and being willing to buy it, right? And so I reverse engineer into like, what do I need to do today? And for the most part, and it took me a long time to realize that, but in my business, in my area, it's like, for the most part, it's like talking to people and just being out there, showing like, and so that's how I know it, like, am I talking to enough people on a weekly basis to feel like I have grown I have more eyeballs on my business and more people interested in getting my services, all of that stuff. So, but then I also know that there are things that are very long-term, like content, online content, and I want to have at least one video a week, at least right now. So I know that I have to do that fairly regularly to have this schedule.
And where do you release that content? On YouTube?
Yeah, so YouTube, I also have the audio version on podcast platforms, and basically the short clips are on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm flooding everywhere because it doesn't take much extra time to do it. I think that's my current content strategy. Yeah. Again, I've done many of them, trying to find what works for me. But yeah, for now, that's how I do it.
Taking a quick detour, but it is related to the topic, I promise. But how do you see social media involved in people's lives then? Talking about balance and having
like
too many impulses, I guess. And
yeah, so
fear of missing.
Like how does it impact people, basically? Yeah. So, well, yeah, it can be. So this is where it can be a slippery slope and pretty insidious, because it can be extremely positive, right? If you follow good content that's very inspirational, motivating, educational, then you can very easily justify the 6 hours a day you spend on your phone. So it's a bit insidious. So it can be very positive if used consciously, right? I like this quote of like, it's a very good servant, but a terrible master. Okay. Now, of course, everybody knows that we can spend a lot of time there and for not much ROI, like return on investment. So it comes down to a lot of being intentional with it and really being honest with oneself. Like even myself, like I notice that sometimes I just, even though they are interesting pages that I may follow, I'm still not getting that much out of it, instead of just like a little hit of dopamine. So yeah, so there's this component, and then there's the fact that, so that's kind of like what I was referring to earlier with the light. So usually we watch it from the screen, right? And screens are emitting a lot of blue light. And if, for example, you look at social media just before bed, that's probably the worst time you can do it, because it will really compromise sleep. It also compromises your dopamine at any time of the day, really. And dopamine is the anticipation hormone. You anticipate a reward. That's what makes you want to pursue a goal, dopamine. And that basically because our dopamine is stimulated by social media. The apps are really engineered for that. Plus the blue light from the screens is also doing that. We are being bombarded with dopamine hits all the time, which makes us less likely from a biochemical standpoint to pursue something. So we tend to be more like Netflix and order a pizza, right? So you get the image. So in that sense, it's not just like how much time am I wasting? It's like, how is this impacting other areas like my sleep, my willingness to pursue things in life, and so on. So, but yeah, it all comes down to being aware of it. And then, like, again, asking myself the question, like, if I speak for myself, like, is this actually serving me and what I want to do? if not, does it fall into the category of I'm just chilling, right? Because there is a room for that as well, right? You don't want to be rigid all the time. And so does it fall into the category of I'm just taking time for myself and winding down a bit? And this is where honesty is very important, because it's very easy to say, yeah, I'm just relaxing. But so yeah, it's very much about intention and at what point in the day do you do it. But yeah, regarding the blue light, there is a funny exercise you can do is if you turn your phone screen red or grayscale, see how much less likely you are to pick it up and look it up.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
You can change that in your settings, right?
Correct, yeah. Because like blue light technology comes from the Las Vegas casinos, where they realized that the more blue light you put inside a casino, the more people stay there.
Yeah.
Right.
They removed the clocks as well, right?
Correct. So they removed the clocks. They added more artificial light, which is mainly blue. They blocked the windows, so you can't see the outside. And then they added free alcohol and women. Right? So the perfect combination to have people stay there, and we always say the house always wins. So the more they stay, the more there is profit for the casino owner.
Yeah, that increases their likelihoods to win.
Correct. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I have written down some questions.
Yeah.
Actually, Anson did.
Yeah, she did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, he did. So now I have to, and I've read it before. But there are some questions that we wanted to ask you specifically. You mentioned that before, but what inspired you to leap from computer science to fertility engineering?
Yeah.
And how did you make it happen?
Okay. So I would love to say, yeah, it's a love for the job, but truth is, like, the biggest driver was the pain of depression. Like, it's not sustainable to stay there. Now, that being said, I do absolutely love what I do now. So it's a massive driver. So what compelled me to jump? So the combination of depression and seeing that I already had enough knowledge to help people, even like a few years ago. And the fact that I absolutely love that. I would, on all my spare time, I would study and learn that. So knowing I wanted to make the transition was easier. Making the transition was a little bit harder because I was in a very comfortable position in Finland as a software engineer, and I was abroad. And so I had to make a plan. And so did I make the transition? So I stayed in my job for another year before actually leaving. So between depression and leaving the job, I stayed a year. And during that year, first off, the fact that I promised myself that I would transition alleviated a lot of depression because I knew I was now on track. And then I just started to learn about business, how to start a business, run a business, market. And also this is why I took my course to teach the classes I now teach on the beach, like Qigong. So that's what I did for this year. And then I moved back to France and started. But this is where reality hit me in the face and entrepreneurship is not just about being good at what you do. So there was this reality check a bit. Of like,
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like for the longest time, and I was frustrated at this. It's like I knew stuff, and I knew I could help people, but people didn't realize I knew. I was like, why don't people come to me, right? So there was this massive reality check of like, oh yeah, I need to actually make it obvious that what I do can help people and makes it appealing. To make it appealing, so that's a big example. And so I was like, oh, I need to learn how to communicate, how to make content, how to record myself in front of a camera, which is very different than talking to someone, right? It feels different. So I just realized that, it's not enough to just want to be an entrepreneur. It's not enough to just be good at what you do. It's like you have to wear all these other hats and be good at many, many different skills. And that was a bit harder to do. And that led to a lot of frustration because I was like, I just want to practice my skill, right? I don't want to do all these things. For a long time, I was a bit not at peace at all, right? Back to what we were saying earlier. But eventually, one thing led to the next. And like did a lot of work on how to be willing to do that, right? On discipline. And
How long have you been in business now?
over 2 years now.
Okay.
But yeah, so initially around Paris, then I moved to the US for a few months, and then I came here in January. So it feels like I've started 3 times over, but every time I learned a lot. So yeah, so that was probably the hardest part, was to learn all these skills simultaneously almost. And yeah, it's like the reality check, really.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I've been doing it for I started my first business over 12 years ago.
Yeah.
It basically never goes away. So it's always the continuous cycle of learning,
Absolutely.
making it better, see how you can improve, and even learning how to work hard. So you can be busy.
Oh yeah.
It's not necessarily effective. And
Yeah.
so really making sure that you work on the right things, prioritizing, outsourcing, and inspiring other people, and whatever it is that you need to do.
Yeah. And
It can be exhausting, but it's very motivating and fulfilling.
It's extremely gratifying. Yeah, I have found that as well, because, and back to the word I mentioned earlier, like I discovered how much more resourceful I could be. Basically, like what was really hard now in hindsight is I realized that when you're born, your parents tell you what to do as a kid. And then you go to school and your teachers tell you what to do. Okay. Then you're potentially employed and your boss tells you what to do. And then you start a business and nobody tells you what to do. So it's like
Tax office does.
yeah. Yeah, they make sure to they tell you some of what to do, which is to pay your taxes, but not how do you get the money to pay your taxes. And I was like, wow, I was never taught that. And but yeah, like you do, and you can be very busy very easily. Like it's very easy to fill your day with meaningless tasks or not as important tasks. And also
email is a great example, I think.
Sorry?
Answering emails is a great example.
Yes. Well, yeah, it is. It is. Whereas, like, sometimes, like, the needle-moving task could be reaching out to some key partners, potentially. And it doesn't take more time, it takes less time. But you know it's, like, really what matters. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the context. But, yeah, it's...
If you could just give 3 pieces of health advice for anyone listening, what would that be?
Oof. I like that question. I will again give a little preface for that. One, I would just remind that, again, it's not like things are not linear. So it's not like because you do one thing that you will get a lot of results, or vice versa. It's not because you have one issue that there is one solution. It can be multiple. So there is that. And the second thing is most of my recommendations, and that's been one obstacle I've been facing, are very simple, almost simplistic. It's like, how come does that work, right? And that's why I've had to study biophysics and go really deep into the science, but the application of these science is very easy. And so the reason I preface my answer with this is to the person who doesn't know what's behind those recommendations, it might seem so simple that people won't do it. Okay. And it happens in business as well, right? It's kind of I will just digress and I will come back to the question. But it's a human feature that we have is we assume that solutions must be complicated when we struggle. Like if I struggle to grow my business, I assume that the answer lies in something extremely complicated. When in reality, most of the time it's like, no, like it's super simple. Like what moves the needle is simple. Just like do it. And in health, it's the same thing. We tend to assume that, especially the people who have been into long journeys to figure out what's wrong, they are like, I've tried everything and I've been very straight with some of my routines, with my diet, and it doesn't work. And then sometimes they come to me and I tell them what I'm about to tell you, and they're like, what? So all that to say, like there is a lot of science and physiology behind those things, and that's why they work, but they sound simple. So the first one I would say is, ideally everybody watches the sunrise. outside at sunrise without glasses, without contacts. It basically sets what we call the circadian rhythm, which is basically how you orchestrate the entire physiology of the body. So imagine what a busy airport would look like without a control tower. It would not look like an airport. It would look like a mess. Right? So without a healthy circadian rhythm, our biochemistry looks like this airport without a control tower. So being outside at sunrise without glasses and without lenses is a big part of setting that cycle and kickstarting the physiology, helping digestion, helping hormones, helping have energy levels, and preparing for sleep the night after that. So that would be number one. Number two, I would say it's a very healthy habit I've recommended for a long time. It's after every meal, just walk outside. 5 minutes, just go outside. And from a entrepreneur or someone who is very productivity oriented, it's a great way to stack benefits, right? It's a very high ROI in that. So you walk, so you move. If you walk after a meal, it's improving digestion. It's reducing the likelihood that blood sugar gets out of balance. You're outside, so ideally you're outside, so you get all the benefits of being outside, the sunlight. If you do it without glasses, even better. If you have to wear glasses, just on top of the nose and let the light come in from above. And so it's a great way to stack benefits on top of one another. So that would be number two. And number three, let's see, I would just say it's hard to pick but I would say, probably just hydrate properly between meals, not during meals, but just drink enough water. Most people are dehydrated, probably 80% of people. And
what is a good volume to drink in a day?
So I would love to say drink until you're not thirsty, but many people are not thirsty, and thirst is not a reliable signal as you become an adult. Like for kids it is, but there are many recommendations. I would like to say like 1.5 liters for most people to start with, and the harder it is outside, the more you need. The heavier you weigh, the more you need. The more active you are, the more you need. But at least starting with like that base foundation.
Do you have do you know how can you identify if you are dehydrated?
So it's a good question, and it's a hard one to answer because water is, like most people know that we are 60-70% water by weight, right? It's by weight. By molecular count, it's 99.9% water.
Oh, really?
So if we were to count all the molecules in the body, 99.9% are water. Because they are so small, by weight it's only 60%. So water is basically omnipresent. And so therefore, lack of water can manifest as many, many problems. So some of the common ones include brain fog, fatigue, stiffness, feeling stiff. It could be dry skin as well. It could be, many times it could be also like a heavy gut as well. Or like acid reflux can happen that you are just dehydrated. Yeah. There are complex physiological explanations, but one of the first places in the body where dehydration manifests is in blood volume, and basically blood will thicken, and it can lead to what we call a histamine response. And for some people who are aware, like histamine is related to the immune system. So you can have allergies popping, like increasing suddenly because you have been dehydrated. So it's very common actually when you take the plane, because being on the plane is extremely dehydrating. You can have allergies you haven't had before or in a long time after leaving the plane because you are dehydrated.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. So
I usually have that.
There you go. So that's dehydration. And just a quick detail, that's not a detail, but hydration is not just about the water, it's also about the minerals in the water, right? So many people tell me like when I drink, I pee it immediately. That's because the body does not retain the water because it does not have enough minerals, right? So if you pee immediately, it means that you need more minerals in the water.
Starting to lose me there. So how do I get enough minerals in my balls?
So it might sound weird, but just a touch of sea salt in the water.
Oh.
But you should not taste the salt, just a touch. And sea salt has all the minerals we need if it's quality one. And it doesn't have to be complicated, just like a pinch in a bottle, just like I have here. And you shake it, dissolve, that's it. And the benefit is the body is very self-regulating. So if you don't have enough, you will just pee everything you drink. If you have too much, it has a way of excreting it as well. So it is able to self-regulate.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Good tip.
Yeah.
So talking about, because you've been to the US, you
Yes.
work there as well, right?
Yes, for some time. And I still have clients who are in the US that I see remotely.
Yeah. And what are basically the differences that you notice between France or Europe and US?
So on which front? Is it on the health front or the business front, or both?
Sorry, on the health front.
On the health front. Okay. So in the US, there are subcultures. So not the whole of US. We know that a lot of the US is unhealthy.
Yeah.
Right? But there are a lot of subcultures of like health fanatics, pretty much. And a lot of our health trends here in France come from the US just 5 to 10 years later. So what I've found is when you are in the right environment in the US, and because of the US culture that's very into investing into oneself, they are very likely to invest in their health, to spend the money to get the practitioner or the gym membership or the regular massage, the supplements, the good food, all of that stuff. That's one thing I've seen a lot here. Whereas over there, whereas here in France, the main difference I've seen is because we have social security, which is great positive in many aspects, it also has downsides in that for most people, health looks like when I have a symptom that manifests, I simply go to the doctor. I almost don't pay anything. Then I get the medication that I almost don't pay for, and it goes away. So the downside of that is it teaches people to not be responsible for their health because they don't have skin in the game. They don't have to pay for anything, and it's provided for basically. So that's the main thing I've seen in terms of difference. And here, most people, not everybody. I don't want to say that, but in many ways,
We are generalizing, so.
yeah, they are less likely to invest in their health and invest in themselves, generally speaking, compared to the US. So that's the main difference. So that's why I've studied a lot of how to do business from the US.
Yeah.
And I struggled a lot to translate that into France. Like, how does that work here as a practitioner? Also there, you can have health insurance, but it's like $400 a month minimum, right? So even if you pay insurance, right? So that's the main differences, I would say. Yeah. So for basically, practically speaking, when I was there, it was very easy for me to find clients that are willing to pay a very high price compared to here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is quite contradicting though, because you would say that if healthcare is being provided and that the government sort of takes care of you, that you would take your health more serious instead of the other way around?
I mean, yes and no. It can be a double-edged sword. But basically, if you never have to, if the government or the Social Security provides it for you, there is no incentive for you to take care of it because it won't cost you anything, even if you don't take care of yourself. So there is no reward punishment kind of thing, and that's how humans learn. Yeah. It's hard to say, but that for the most part, that's how we learn.
We're basically dogs.
Yeah. We are mammals. We have the same mammal brain plus a human brain on top of it, but we have still this part that's very active. And so because incentives dictate outcomes, we are not very much incentivized here to invest in our health and be proactive until, for most people, unfortunately, until we have a tragedy in the family or a health crisis in our own life, then it's like, oh, I have to take that seriously.
Yeah. But if I look around, they do act then in that specific case.
Yeah.
But it won't last usually.
Yeah, it's
more a short moment.
Yeah, and so that's why, from a business perspective, that's been both frustrating and also, when I see that way, it's like a great opportunity. It's like, how can I learn to be so good at communicating that it makes people like want to do it? Because the moment I figured that out, I won.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I've been figuring out how do I package my services in a way that's very appealing. And so that's why also I'm going into the kind of the beauty sector, like starting with the flat tummy. I will go like into skin health and things like that because people are already doing that.
And I think one of the things that you're already doing, obviously, but is kind of practicing what you preach, right? So being in shape so that people see, all right, that is someone who looks happy and looks healthy, and even though you can't look into someone's mind, but you do see signs of happiness, or at least content and fulfillment.
Yeah, correct. I appreciate you saying that, first of all. And it's been something I've had to keep in mind as well during the growth of my business, and still now. It's how can I do it in such a way that I'm also being an example of how to do it? Because if I'm applying my own philosophy and it doesn't work, then like it really won't be good advertisement, right? So that's why I keep in mind that I am kind of my own walking billboard. And I'm always advertising my services just being outside. So I keep that in mind. So it can be felt as pressure, but it's also like, I really want to apply that, and I believe in what I do. And when it works, which it does, it gives rise to a lot of conviction and passion into what I do. And so I know that, I have conviction when for example, you asked me the 3 things to do. Like, I have conviction that it works because I've been doing it consistently, and I know it makes a difference. Yeah.
So, how do you see the wellness industry evolving, let's say, in the next 5 years?
In France?
Yeah.
So it's hard to... I mean, there is research in many, many areas, and you can see like there's more and more AI being used in like diagnosis and even prescriptions now. I think there will be a lot of that in 5 years. And I think to a great extent as well, like it has always been the case, we will see what's currently in the US right now. We'll see it in 5 years here. That's very common. So it will just be the latest and greatest trend. But I think there is a lot of work about using AI and someone's genes to really try to find a tailored approach. That will be one area of development. And I think having things like it's a term I don't really like here especially, but having a coach will be more normal here, where in the US it's normal already. But I think the concept of having a coach will be more accepted here as well. I think it's starting to be the case in like the UK and the northern European countries a bit, and I think there will be some of that as well.
And that could be a huge opportunity for your work.
Potentially.
So sorry. Okay.
Although it's like I try to not use that word when I describe myself. I use sometimes I use vitality engineer because it's something I created and I like it, but I use therapist, and I more like describe what I do, like the problems I solve, and instead of giving a blank statement of like, because what is a therapist? What does it do, right? So it's something I've learned from a business perspective. Is like just mention what the problem you solve, because that's what people will notice immediately. Like, oh yeah, I have a friend who has knee pain. Can he see you? Right. So
what's your added value?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's where, like, in my position, there is this fine line between therapy and business, right? And like because I don't want to be a prisoner of my own clinic either, right? So that's why I'm doing a lot of work online and conferences and workshops. And at the same time, I really want to be a great clinician. So I want to have some clients coming to the clinic and do that, but I want to do it from very consciously and not get trapped in my own business. That's not why I changed careers, right?
Well, you probably figured it out yourself already, but content seems to be the solution to that, because then
Yeah.
you can really show others that you're knowledgeable, that you know your stuff, that you've done it before, and you can help a lot of people. And those that want to follow up, they can contact you, book a class or one-on-one coaching.
Exactly.
Sounds a good strategic move.
Yeah. Thank you. I've been figuring it out for a long time, and it's not perfect yet, but I feel like I'm heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Sounds like it. So what has been the most difficult challenge you've faced?
Yeah, I think it's kind of what I mentioned earlier. Like it was the reality check of like, it's not enough to be good at what you do. And so that's from the outside. From the inside, it was handling or managing the emotions that arose from noticing that, which was for me a lot of frustration, because I would see other people succeeding and they were saying things I was not agreeing with at all. And I'm like, that's not possible. So I had to really manage my frustration with that. But yeah, I would say really the biggest challenge was the learning curve of entrepreneurship, of wearing all the hats and being at least somewhat good in all of this. Because I know a lot of, let's say, therapists or health practitioners who are really, really good at what they do. But when you look at them online, their content is cringy. Like you don't want to, like it doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good either. It's like, I don't want to be like that. So I want to at least learn how to make decent quality content, have good audio, engaging things, learn how to make hooks, like lots of tiny skills that add up over time. And that was probably the hardest thing to accept first and then to actually embrace.
Yeah, funny. For the first thing, coming back to the frustration, because I think any entrepreneur can relate to that, and any person can. And I've heard the saying once that you should not believe anything you see and only 50% you hear or read. What was it again? Don't
believe anything you hear.
Don't believe anything you hear, and only 50% of what you see. And I mean, because taking social media again as an example, you only see the highlights of someone's life and someone's career. You don't really see that routine and all the actions that they put into, and you don't know how much money they make or how much people they actually have converted into signing up and whatsoever. So they usually tend to act in a way that is not real.
Yeah.
And that can lead to a lot of frustration.
Yeah, correct. That's right. And it comes back to also like kind of the question of happiness at the very beginning. But like basically there is this very popular book in personal development called The 4 Agreements. Very popular. And I like it a lot. And basically it's like 4 rules to live by if you want to kind of live happily. And
what are they?
So I have to admit I can't recall all of them. But the first one is, how does it, like, be impeccable with your word. So when you say something, do it. And like many people, right? So mean what you say and say what you mean. That's what it means. And there is one is don't take anything personally, which that's how many people get hurt. And that's how many relationships get into conflicts, like romantic or otherwise. And the third one I was referring to, I can't recall the fourth one right now, but the third one, which I was referring to, which is massive, it's don't make assumptions. And we make assumptions, and there are reasons for that. There's an evolutionary and survival rationale for that from the human mind and everything. But we make assumptions all the time. And the reason I'm bringing that up is when we believe what we hear, we assume that it's true. And when we believe what we see on social media, we assume that it's a good representation of someone's life. So the power in that agreement, according to the book, is that, back to what you are saying about process versus outcome, I am in control of my assumptions, but I'm not in control of what I hear and see. But if I assume that it's just what is being said or what I just see, but it doesn't have to mean it's 100% true, then I'm more in control of that, and I'm less likely to be influenced, right? So I learned that the hard way, but now I try to keep in mind always, like, am I making any assumption right now? And we always do. Like, when you wake up in the morning and you don't feel great, like it feels heavy, like you make the assumptions, you make the assumption that the day is not going to be great, right? That's an assumption. And what is that based on? Usually it's your past, and your mind will conjure up many reasons why, but doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, nothing fundamentally that can prove that it's going to be
correct, right? But so we do that all the time, right? Another very common example is like, let's say that you are used to texting someone and you're used to them replying fairly quickly, and then one day you send them a text and for some reason they don't reply. Most people, is like they start to make the assumption, what did I say? Did I say anything wrong? Or are they with someone else? Or da-da-da. These are assumptions, and that's how we suffer, right? But these are all assumptions that is all self-generated, right? So we do that all the time. And so yeah, that's how it can lead to frustration and many things.
Yeah. Coming back to the first one, being an impeccable, and what you mentioned about learning as well, is something I personally really enjoy and really was bad at school, because I was kind of labeled as someone. They did not say that I was dumb, but
Yeah.
but I definitely did not fit in the system.
Yeah.
But I really wasn't a big learner in school, but now that's why I kind of became an entrepreneur as well, for the freedom, and that is cliche, but it is true. The freedom to explore path that you want to, and go in directions that you want to, and learn things. And that, honestly, that is one of the most brilliant things that I've been doing in the last 10 plus years. Learning video editing, and I'm not saying that I'm the best at it or very good, but that you dive into that matter and then try to observe and absorb everything that there is to learn. I really enjoy that. Yeah. You too?
Yeah, I do. And this is the part that's very gratifying, because it's between you and you. And also this is where like principles like the 80-20 comes into play. It's like 80% of what you need to know can be acquired in 20% of the time, basically. And even in my field of therapy, and I could give an example if you want, but because I have to be fairly good at many disciplines, I just need, and it's not good enough for me to be good at anatomy. Like, anatomy is good because I need to know where the muscles are, tendons, okay. But I need to know about neurology, because if someone is in pain, it goes through the nervous system. There is neurology involved. I need to know about psychology. I need to know about physiology, how the organs function. I need to know about exercise science. I need and because otherwise I'm useless, right? If I just know about anatomy, okay, you have pain in your triceps brachii, super helpful, but I can't do anything with you because I just know the anatomy. And basically the point I'm making is learning how to figure out those 80% you can learn in 20% of the time is massive. And also as an entrepreneur, because 80% of what you need to know to edit videos, you can learn pretty quickly. Then it's the advanced stuff to become a master. That's what takes time.
Yeah, and usually that little difference between being good enough to put it out there and being the best editor that there is, the best photographer, best videographer, and so on. Takes you, like you said, 80% of your time to become probably even less than 20% better. You will notice at some point, but
it's basically there are diminishing returns. And I will just make this anecdote because it pops into my head and it's extremely common. Like, many people, especially women, because they are dedicated, they basically do exactly that with the 80-20%, like the 80-20 principle with diet. Like, many of women who want to, let's say, lose weight, they will really nail down the diet. They really be like impeccable, like follow the rules exactly to the gram, everything. But they might not do all of the other stuff. And at some point the diet has diminishing returns, and it will also ruin your life because you won't have any social life. You will have to always watch what you eat. And basically, because they put all of their focus on one aspect of health, like it has diminishing returns eventually. Whereas if you were to do the 80-20 all the other stuff, breathing, movement, all of that stuff, you would have way better results. And that's a message I'm trying to tell people, is you don't need to be that strict with diet unless you are in a critical condition. For some time, you may need to be a bit strict for some time. But like, just try to be more balanced in other areas, right? And that way you can actually have more flexibility with your diet, for example.
But without going into too much detail, because that could be an entire episode, of course.
Yeah.
But if you could give some concrete tips for women, like so diet is one,
Diet.
breathing is one.
Yeah. Okay. So on the topic, so for women, it's more delicate, generally speaking, with health trends. So there are a few things I will just
Only with health?
Yeah.
Sorry, but
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's overlaps into different things. So the thing is with the women, first of all, most like 90+% of the research that's being done in the medical literature is on men. Okay. So most of the recommendations are for men, not women. Number two, and it's mostly because women are more expensive to study, because if we wanted to be comprehensive in studying women, we would need to study them at different phases of their menstrual cycle and plus menopause, because depending on where they are at in their cycle, they don't react the same on the input. So, and because they have a more complex physiology. So that's why, one of the reasons why it's more delicate with women. So the problem is, especially in the world of weight loss for women, many of the advice does not take into account their hormonal fluctuations, and
that has a huge impact.
It does, yeah. And it's very, basically it's like a lot of stress. Like a lot of cardio for women, I'm not that excited about that. You can do cardio, but sometimes and within reason, and also cardio, nose breathing. Because breathing through your nose has a very dramatic effect compared to mouth breathing during cardio, hormonally and how you feel after, and the effect of the actual cardio. So I prefer going to the gym, like resistance training for most people, including women. Then when it comes to diet, my philosophy is always first, before you remove anything, just first supply the body with what it needs. That should be obvious, but let's start with that. Because the moment you have a nutritional deficiency and then you add restrictions to reduce calories, it's like adding fuel to the fire, right? Because now the body is stressed because it doesn't have enough calories and it has deficiencies that it needs to compensate for. So it's a recipe for a disaster. So first, like giving the body what it needs. And I always say, like, it's not just about what's in your plate, it's about what you can digest as well. Right? The worst I was feeling from my digestive standpoint was when I was eating the most amount of vegetables. Because there is, again, diminishing returns. It's like you don't want to eat more vegetables. It's like the right amount. So first, like supplying the body with what it needs, eating enough protein for most women, that's really important. And really like, learning to adapt it's easier said than done. That's why it takes some education to do it right. But adapting your exercise to your stressors. Like if you're stressed about work or your relationship, like exercise is a stress, right? So you won't be able to handle that as well. And generally speaking, just like be gentle with your body, and with other strategies like using light intelligently, sleeping well, hydrating well, you can have weight loss easily without forcing, basically. The moment you struggle is when your body does not allow you to lose weight and you have to force it. And instead of asking the question, why isn't the body allowing me to lose weight? We just push harder usually. So that's not the right. But yeah, like nose breathing. So for breathing, like nose breathing at all times, ideally, except when you eat, when you speak, and when you kiss. That's it. Right. Diet, like supplying the body with what it needs first, and then potentially reducing a little bit if you want to lose weight, and optimizing the other stuff. Now, from an exercise standpoint, I prefer walking every day than over exercising, like overdoing cardio. Like I prefer way more just walking every day and maybe once, twice, or 3 times a week of resistance training in the gym than cardio 5 days a week, 6 days a week. Yeah, for most people it works better.
Yeah, seems, yeah.
It's more time efficient as well.
Yeah.
Because like the way I describe it, cardio is like burning calories by hand. That's why I say it. Whereas resistance training is you are basically teaching your body to raise its metabolism so it burns calories even at rest by itself because it's recovering.
That's what we want.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, these are a few tips.
Good.
That's
Great tips.
That's basically the topic of my workshop soon coming up, and I have videos on that topic in French, but on my YouTube as well.
And before we end, I mean, I made a joke obviously to women, but I have huge respect for women.
Yeah.
And it's with my wife as well. I mean, you see how you are. Well, in ways, you feel so fortunate to be a man sometimes in this world. If you see what they have to go through at sometimes, it must be quite a lot. But how would you? I mean, you are a man, a male. How there must be a basic understanding of the body, how it works, but you can't feel what they feel.
Yeah.
How would you answer to that? How do you know that?
So, well, I know the theory, of course, and I've been close to women who suffered a lot. So I do have compassion as well for those who have like menstrual issues. So, and sometimes they are surprised to see that I know how their cycle works better than them. So that helps them trusting me as well when I give them advice. But I think as a man, it's mostly like just having compassion and understanding that, like there's a cycle. Basically, where it's challenging for women is their biology is cyclical in nature, when our society expects them, just like it expects us to be constant, like constantly productive, constantly show up, constantly ready to go, and doesn't work for them. So it's a very high expectation for a biology that's cyclical in nature. So that's where like having compassion and understanding is helpful. And then there is, for women, there are all the pressures of being beautiful, having a nice skin, looking good, So that's a lot of weight to carry. And very often it makes their health worse because they tend to push harder. They are very disciplined usually. They really, like when I have female clients, they really listen way better than men. It starts.
I've seen it with my wife as well. If she puts her mind to something, then it's crazy, you know.
Yeah, and usually it's very conscientious. It's very impeccable when it's done. It's like clean.
But it's also difficult, like you mentioned, and that is one of the things that I meant. That is quite hard for women. That the beauty standard is incredibly unreasonable, first of all, and high.
Yeah, and that's actually my next venture that I'm starting to work on. But it's like I don't like how basically most of marketing in this arena, cosmetics, beauty, is leveraging women's insecurity by displaying unrealistic standards and then selling them products that are most of the time toxic. Like cosmetics are probably the most toxic products on average. There are exceptions, but on average. And I don't feel great about it. And that's why I want to package some of my knowledge into how do you enhance beauty and well-being really naturally by optimizing health and da. But like that's massive pressure. That's very unrealistic, just like social media that we were discussing earlier. And this is where it is incumbent upon women, once again, they have this responsibility to realize that that's not reality. And the best thing we can do as men is just have compassion, and like it's easier said than done, but like just be loving with who they are. That's it. Like, but it is not always an easy place to be. So that's why I just like you. I'm like, it's actually easier to be a man sometimes.
Sometimes,
yeah.
Sometimes it feels like we are partying all the time, and there is pressure on us, of course.
It is unfair in many ways.
Yeah. we've covered so many very interesting topics.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. One last question. What is next for you?
So more conferences, more workshops, and this venture into I want to release my first online offering next spring. And so far I'm thinking about really making it around, from like a marketing standpoint, around beauty and how to have nice skin, how to have all these things, flat tummy, but in a healthy way, really healthy way. And also by reinforcing the fact that like when it's healthy, it will look good. But to look like what we see on ads, you have to go beyond, and it's unhealthy at some point. So that's probably what's next. Growing the clinic, just like generally speaking, growing my reputation, more keeping with the online content, meeting new partners and all of that stuff. That's really, but like the concrete project that's coming next is my first online offering soon.
Yeah. Sort of sounds like you're trying to set a more realistic new beauty standard.
Yeah, and also the way to do it. Yeah, because like basically I like to use logic to pinpoint how irrational some things are sometimes, but basically dry skin is not a cream deficiency. It's not, right? It comes from elsewhere. The cause is elsewhere. And one thing that always drives my thinking, whether as a clinician or generally speaking, is like, why? Always asking why. What causes that? What causes that? Because if you really want to get to the root of it, you need to get to ask this question and have the courage to investigate, which many people don't have the courage, because it's usually not a quick fix. And that's what most advertisement is selling us, right? It's like the quick fix. Well, even in business, like many things, like you will immediately feel like that. And that's
instant gratification.
And exactly. With social media, it's very much reinforced. So yeah, that's very much what I'm into. And I know I have the knowledge to have have enough material to offer something valuable. And I have the passion for the subject. I have the understanding of, to the best of my ability, what they are going through, women. And for me, the biggest work will be how do I package that and market it in a way that's very appealing.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Josh.
It was a real pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, likewise.
And I will see you at one of the next events, I think.
For sure. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.